Disclaimer. I know that the reception to 3+1 has been mostly positive, but I genuinely disliked it. So if you enjoyed it, I'm happy for you, but be warned, there is going to be a nice helping of negativity in this video. Mostly focused on Asuka, of course. I'm going to interject here, after having finished with the video, because I realize that it may be a bit too negative, so to counterbalance that, I'll just say that I do not dislike Asuka in this movie. My dislike is of the contexts she is written into, and the choices made about her fate. I can appreciate the execution sometimes, but I find myself very often in disagreement with the decision making. The movie is more concerned with how to limit Asuka's role than it is to give Asuka a send-off that puts her in a driving seat. It restrains her to make room for a character, who shall not be mentioned, that just doesn't belong, instead of nurturing her potential. Anyway, thanks for watching and back to the video. I read the spoilers back in March, so I've had the opportunity to gather my thoughts heading into this. Then I watched it, and lost even my enthusiasm to critique it. I feel like I've been infected with the disinterest shown by the writers towards Asuka's story. With it, there you go, no fuck off, kind of happy ending that is the result of a last minute, poorly set up asshole. From my perspective, it succeeded in masterfully dodging the great majority of the meaningful narrative beats they could have easily hit with the character. Giving Asuka a win as a pilot? Dodged. Let Asuka and Shinji come together and cooperate? Dodged. Giving them a non-dysfunctional affectionate moment? Dodged. Letting Asuka choose her own fate at the end? Dodged. Setting up a future for Asuka not tied to a guy or piloting? Dodged. Showing Asuka smiling at the end? Guess what? Dodged. I will talk about how, but first I want to bring up a specific scene in the movie, one that I found to be terrifying. It is when Shinji confronts Gendo the first time, after Ritsuko shoots him, and then goes on to patch up his relationship with Misato and the rest of Viller's crew. Let's take a look around the setting of the scene. What's that? Oh, it's the head of Asuka Seva. Big and hard to miss. As far as we and Misato are concerned, Asuka's dead. There is no way Shinji could miss it. So how does he react to Asuka's apparent death? Does he shout her name, like in End of Evangelion? Does he ask for more info about it while showing concern? Does he flinch upon the sight of said head? No. He doesn't react or mention it at all. Let me say it again. Shinji, in the final chapter of the story of Evangelion, responds to Asuka's death with complete and utter indifference. Even worse, he has an extensive conversation with Misato, mentioning Rei's disappearance, Kaji, Misato's son. He even smiles at her, and they hug it out. Not a single mention of Asuka is made. When Misato takes a bullet for him, he shouts her name in worry, as you would, so he clearly still has concern for the well-being of others. And how about the tone-deaf conversation that Misato has with Shinji, while sitting with her back against Michiu's head, I might add, about how she's still Shinji's guardian and will support him in every way she can. Wasn't she also Asuka's guardian back in the day? And how did that work out? Oh, Asuka's dead, and Misato couldn't care less. Oh, and the whole conversation with Misato and Sakura, and Shinji of course, about how, as it turns out, they actually owe Shinji for piloting. They don't really hate him, and they all cry and get emotional. So you owe Shinji, but you don't give a shit that somebody who has piloted and fought for you for 14 years has just died? Now, just to make sure I got it right. The hypocrisy and the double standard of this sequence is so extreme that it must have been an oversight. Otherwise, we are talking about arguably the cruelest, coldest scene in the entire rebuild. I get it. Nobody cares about Asuka. She's alone, and she has always been alone. It's part of what makes the character tragic. But at least Shinji, for fuck's sake. Oh, and let me mention Asuka's great friend Mari, who is so concerned with her potential death that mere minutes after she shouts her name, she's back to smiling, and who waits until the last second to warn Shinji that Asuka can still be saved. Come on, Anno, at least make an effort. I feel like I should probably move on to the most controversial thing about this movie, Asuka and Kensuke's relationship. This is hardly the worst thing about Asuka's story, but it is absolutely a complete and total assball. It is nothing but an excuse. Kensuke's bond with Asuka is born purely out of the necessity, of giving Asuka somebody to be with at the end, after they decide to go for the other epic assball that is the Mari-Shinji conclusion. Because being abandoned by Mari, her only friend, and Shinji would have left her completely alone and isolated. There is no heart to the relationship. It is made up of a couple of boring, okay conversations shared in the first part of the movie. It is also vague as to what it entails, whether it is a fatherly thing, or romantic, or both really. The problem is that by establishing that Asuka hasn't really opened up to anyone, including Kensuke, and by not letting her do so until arguably the very end of the movie, because fuck organic development, there's no time, anything positive to come from it is left to our imagination. Let's not forget that Kensuke doesn't do anything to help Asuka explicitly during the movie. He's kind to her, but that's about it. We are supposed to extrapolate that he could offer her positive guidance from his scenes with Shinji. Imagine being the character who is supposed to give Asuka happiness, and most of your time in the movie is spent helping Shinji instead. And let's not be naive. They've paired Asuka with one of the most unlikable characters in the franchise, who is not going to suddenly be completely re-evaluated just because he's grown up to be mature and reliable. Kensuke will always be the creepy weirdo he was in NG. Anno knows that, and of course he knew people wouldn't take well to this, which is why, as I was saying before, the relationship is left deliberately vague, with Asuka being alone at the station at the end. They give you the rope, it's your choice to hang yourself with it. But enough about Kensuke. The movie overall seems to be trying to give each character a thematically fitting send-off, be it a clear improvement over their previous ending, like Misato's cool, noble sacrifice, versus her more, let's say, self-shaming one in Yoi, or a subversion of it, Reikyu being able to finally develop human feelings and find their place within a social context, Rei and Kaworu surviving the movie and becoming humans while they were dead in the original, Ritsuko shooting first and surviving. But the best endings are definitely Shinji's and Gendo's. Shinji is able to take a hold of his life, finding the determination to save his friends. It's your turn, Kaworu, it's just you left, Rei, very heartfelt, totally not narcissistic and self-absorbed, but still, he redeems himself for his past failures. Same with Gendo, being able to reunite with Yui, mending his relationship with Shinji, and saving his son's life. What of Asuka? How do you subvert her ending? Well, her biggest failure was that she failed to defeat the MP Evas in Yoi, not to speak of her constant failures as a pilot in the rebuild. So, how about giving her a nice, satisfying win? Allowing her to accomplish what she has dedicated her life to. Seems pretty reasonable and easy to do. I mean, look at what Mari does, right? Of course it isn't reasonable, of course. Asuka is nothing but a loser, and I say that with all the love I have for the character. Alright, so never mind making Asuka's story one of redemption for her piloting prowess or lack thereof. What else could they do? How about effectively mending and building on her relationship with Shinji? Give them a few heart-to-hearts, let the relationship grow throughout the movie and allow them to come together at the end. Be happy the way they failed to in NG. I mean, look at Mari and Shinji, being happy together. Wait, what? Am I sensing a pattern of cuckery? A pattern of Judaic betrayal? Of fairy tales with overly lustful godmothers? Mari, what did you do to Asuka? The thing is that Asuka fights one battle and gets immediately destroyed by her own clone. Everything she is, everything she has worked for, taken away without chance of redemption. And to add insult to injury, Asuka nearly kills herself with her collar, essentially surrendering herself to her fate. Remember how she fought not to die in Yoi, and how she never gave up? Well, how about adding some extra losing sauce to Shikinami? Guess that is a subversion. But let's take a look at Asuka's relationship with Shinji. What is there to talk about? She acts as Shinji's thuggish psychoanalyst during the village arc. Some of the scenes aren't bad, but I believe they have a single conversation where Shinji actually says words to her, only to be tasered afterwards. Not the most positive or exciting of relationships. This movie is just one prolonged, dysfunctional, underwhelming breakup between them. The relationship is a carcass whose limbs are getting slowly torn off all throughout the movie. It's dead, so there is no pain. The relationship, I mean. But it's quite a nasty spectacle. It's interesting, in a grotesque way, to see how easily their bond is just completely given up on, in favor of the very meager satisfaction of an asynchronous, past tense confession that yes, they liked each other back in the day. Every opportunity to build something new between them is thrown aside. Nothing blossoms, no friendship, no love, unlike between Reikyu and Shinji, the friendship I mean. The relationship and feelings exist only in the past. But what was Asuka and Shinji's past relationship, if not hope for a better future together? A hope for the future confined to the past is no hope at all. Right, that was too unclear. What I meant was that Asuka and Shinji's journey comes to an end with the explicit acknowledgement of their potential to be together. But acknowledgement of potential is not the same as fulfillment of potential. Their ending tells us that it could have been, but it is too late for it to be. It is Evangelion peacefully giving up on them. They are not coming together, and there is no future for them after the end. I want to focus now on what I think is the worst thing they've done to Asuka in this movie. Setting aside for the scene I talked about before, but that doesn't count. We're not going to count it. It's a mistake. It happens during Shinji's confession on the beach. He tells Asuka he liked her. She blushes, turns around, Mari randomly pops up, says her line, quickly because there's no time, and Asuka gets unceremoniously booted out of Unit 13 and Evangelion as a whole. Considering the movie is trying to split Asuka and Shinji up, it seems quite stupid to make Asuka react like that. I mean, does she still have feelings? Why is she blushing? We'll never know. Kinda bad. Not the worst thing, though. Also, Asuka and Shinji's farewell is the only one where the person who receives it doesn't smile, and the only one that is devoid of a symbolical gesture of physical affection. Gendo and Misato hug Shinji. Kaworu and Rei hold his hand. But here's the thing. No farewell needed an affectionate exchange more than that between the two people who throughout Eva have hurt each other the most. The two whose hands were not touching on that very beach back in 1997. Very bad anno, but again not the worst thing. Here's the worst thing. They have spent the entire rebuild showing how Asuka's life is such that she never truly had any control over it. Anything she tried to do, be it as a pilot or as a girl, she failed at. In 2.0, she tries to help Shinji and gets infected by an angel because of it. In this movie, she fails to help him out while at a village. I mean, Shinji actually thinks of the people that helped him, and the people that he thinks about are Reikyu, Kensuke, and Toji, and Asuka doesn't even make an appearance at that point. As it turns out, she was created in a lab, engineered like a puppet. For all her life, her strings were being pulled by other people, last of whom, Gendo, that uses her as a sacrifice for Unit 13. Asuka, the puppet who tries to break free of her chains, the doll that refuses to be thrown away. The end of her story is a perfect representation of how thoughtless and disrespectful the rebuild has been to her. Shinji chooses Asuka's fate. She has pretty much no say over it. Her only words, kinda, baka Shinji. She is completely at his mercy. Because obviously, after the life she has led, the best way for a story to end is to deny her even the bare minimum self-determination to allow her to choose her own future. Her strings remain until the end, pulled last by Shinji and Mario, and she's lucky they had her best interest at heart. In Ioi, Asuka chooses to reject instrumentality and come back to life. In this movie, she's not even given the choice. Because extending the scene by 1 minute and showing Asuka walking away on her own 2 feet from that beach was just too much to ask. Of course, fanservice suit is completely tone deaf, considering what happens between Shinji and Asuka in End of Evangelion, and reducing Asuka to nothing other than somebody's waifu without letting her accomplish anything is just as bad. Farewell, Asuka. I wish things had gone differently. I loved you. Oh, and say hi to Kensuke.